What's up, guys? You know who it is. It's your boy Kenny with JDM Muscle, and we're back, and this is episode 7 of the Nissan S13 Drift build. Now, this one's a little bit different. It's kind of jumping a couple things that I had planned to do. I really want to get the dash done, but with this being said, I'm about a month and a couple weeks out from my first drift event, and I don't have an angle kit yet. A little bit of concern, but I did find one that I really want to go with. I actually spoke with the guys today. It's from Villains. You actually take off your stock knuckles and lower control arms. You send them to them, and they mod the knuckles, extend the lower control arms. I do believe that they're actually going to cut it, weld in a couple inches, and then they do send you new extended tie rod ends. So my worry was that I need to get the parts off, get them in the mail, get them to them. They said the turnaround can be about 4 days to a week, and then they can still make it back. I'd like to get it on, and I'd like to at least make sure everything fits, because we know when working with cars, nothing ever fits, doesn't break, or something doesn't go wrong. The fear is that I know I'm going to probably have to get a few new bushings. The ball joints are probably going to be shitty unless you had replaced them before. But the idea is, guys, I'm going to have to take the front bumper off. We're going to have to jack the car up, take the tires off, take the knuckles off, and then take the lower control arms off and send them out. So let's stop talking, let's get started. And this is episode 7, which is, it's going to be an angle. So we do have the right side of the car done, knuckle, lower control arm, everything is off. But now let's show you guys what we're working with and the proper steps I have to take for this. Now when it comes to this, I was able to have every part I needed. Most of the tools were 10, 12 millimeters, 14, 17s, 21s, 22s, and then of course for that big lock nut in the center, that was a 32 mil. On a 240 at least. Other cars that I've worked on too, that center nut is a 32 as well. So first thing I'm gonna have to do, guys, you can see I've got this big spacer on here. Not everybody's gonna have this big spacer, but I am trying to put those front wheels out a little bit to put more stance on the ground. So after I pull this off, it's just these 5 right here. I believe it is just a, what is this? A 19, so I'm just gonna pop it in, take all 5 of these off. This spacer will come off. I'm then going to take off the brake caliper. It's just 2 bolts in the back. After that, we're going to be able to pull the rotor off. And then after the rotor, I'm going to take off that big nut, that big center nut, that 32 mil. And then I'll just show you from to get in and unattach the unattach the coilover from the rest of the setup. The only tool I have had to purchase is, once we get down to the ball joint, guys, to knock that knuckle off, I'll show you. I did pick this up from Advanced Auto. It is just a ball joint separator. I'll show you how to use it here shortly. It just goes on as you tighten it up, it separates it and pops that ball joint off that knuckle. So let's get started. And guys, just like that, with all 5 off, well, let's see, maybe I didn't get that one all the way. Even though this big damn spacer is stuck on there pretty good, I do have a bunch of PB Blaster inside there so I can get that off. Otherwise, I did start removing the caliper, because that is something we can do while that sits. It is on this one. These are Z32, so they are bigger. Originally, the 240 came with a 4 lug. This has already been converted to the 5 lug, so it does have Z32 or Nissan 300ZX calipers on the front. So it's just 2 19 mils. Let's get these off, and then we'll be able to pull the caliper and set it to the side. All right, so with 19 mils out, we can take this, let's set it back out of the way. All right, guys, so now with the caliper off, we've got this whole section right here. Let's work on getting this off, and then we'll be able to get that that rotor off as well. Once the caliper was up out of the way, I was able to take a rubber mallet, and I just kind of went around, banging all the way around that. It wasn't able to free it up at all, so I just went behind the rotor lightly and started tapping all the way around it until it started to kind of work it forward, which then We can take this off. I'm going to put all the bolts right back inside so we don't lose them, and just like that, the rotor comes off as well. We'll clean that up on the inside so it doesn't stick again, but for now, let's stick this to the side. And next, we're going to crack that big 32 mil loose, and then we'll be able to take the spindle off, and then we're just going to have the lower control arm still. We need to take off. We'll have to do this knuckle, unconnect it from the coilover itself, and then we're going to have to, unfortunately, probably use that ball joint separator and pop this up and off. So let's keep rolling. All right, guys, and just like that, I was able to crack it free. Did have to put some body weight on it, but we then have a loose center nut. All right, guys, there is most of the time a little washer on the inside of it as well, so when we take this off, don't lose that inner washer either. And then we'll just put the nut, if I can get it off, right back in the center, and we'll set this to the side as well. And now we have that exposed. All right, guys, so now with the knuckle, we've cracked loose the nut over here, kept it on. Unfortunately, this did not come unconnected, that tie rod end. And then there is right behind the knuckle itself is a big old bolt as well. Most of the time it does have a little cotter pin in them, so you're going to have to pull it out of both of them, set it to the side so you can use it later. But now that I do have the knuckle bolt off, it unfortunately is still stuck to that ball joint at the bottom. So next we'll put this on, and right where that bolt is, make sure that you screw it on just enough, because when we use that separator tool, I'll show you here in a second, we're going to want to not mess up the threads. So we'll put it back on. And then from here, I was able to loosen up all of the coilover bolts. So we'll take these off, just because once we pop this knuckle itself, we're going to want it to be able to have a little bit of clearance to jump. And I don't want to not be able to do it because we have the coilover in the way. So at least on these ones, I have Blitz. They were two 17 mils. And then from here, that knuckle is free to come out of the coilover. Super shitty, but I just popped the knuckle. I was just trying to get it set and just tighten down a little bit so I could show you guys popping it. But long story short, this is what the separator tool is. Your ball joint, you can try to save it. It was just too hard to hammer this on because it goes through here, so underneath the knuckle itself between the ball joint, and then the top just sits on top of that big nut. I've had to break both boots on each side to be able to fit this in here. Once it's on, you just start tightening this, and it slowly pulls each thing apart. I ended up putting a pair of pliers on the bottom and then just twisting it tight. And guys, once you get it really tight and you can't start to move it anymore, just have a little patience, sit back, and it will pop. Most of the time, if you have that much torque on it, it's gonna pop. So that's what I do. I tighten, and just when I have to start fighting it, I just kind of sit back and pop. Make sure to keep that that nut on the back just almost flush, so it just pops a little bit. But you know, just like that, it pops the ball joint, and now this can come up and off. I just need to use it again. I'll show you guys on this one, popping just this off of the tie rod.
In the meantime, if you guys were wondering what's going on in the corner of the video, it's the Z. It's very much taken apart right now. As you can see, we had to get a new radiator mount. Good news is, it's all done and it just needs to be all reinstalled. Bad news is, there's a lot of bolts. And there's a lot of bolts. So, thanks to Kenny, all of the hoses are off because my weak little arms could not get them off. Now, all I have to do is put it back together. Easy peasy, right? Right?
Yeah. All right, guys, so I kind of messed up with the camera and wasn't able to show you popping of the knuckle off the ball joint, but that is okay because my tie rod end is actually stuck as well. So you can see, once that nut is broke loose, you just kind of make it flush with this. This just bangs right between, and then as this starts to tighten, like so, it starts to put pressure between and it'll pop. So I just do mine with a set of pliers. So we'll put it on here. We'll start to tighten down. And like I said, even if it doesn't feel like you can tighten it anymore, trust me, it is going to pop. It always does. But luckily with this little bit of nut still on there, it'll only pop a little bit, so you don't have to worry about it popping off, hitting your hand, anything crazy like that. But let's keep tightening it down a little bit. And now that I'm videoing, it probably won't pop, but it should. It's getting pretty tight right now. And just like that, it popped. So now we can loosen this nut, and we've got that free tie rod end. So from here, guys, let's pull the knuckle. Come on. All the way off. And just like that, guys, knuckle is off. I'm just going to keep the bolts with it. That way I don't lose them for now. I am going to end up getting new ball joints on both sides once I send this lower control arm in. So next from here, I've already broke free these lower control arm, this bracket right here. So let's take these off. And then I've got this one and then one more bolt underneath and this lower control arm. All right, guys, so now that we're up close, knuckles off, this sway bar's off, that trailing arm's off. We've got the tie rod off. The next thing holding it on way in there is one bolt, and that is for the lower control arm. So all we have to do is pull that one bolt off, and this is free, and we'll have to put the brake up on the sway bar. Guess I'll have to do that with two hands, but one more bolt, and this is off. Then we're gonna package it up, clean it up a little bit. Nah, fuck it, we're not even gonna clean it. We're gonna send it to them dirty, that way they can clean it. And we're gonna send it off to Villain. They're out of Washington. They said about a 3 to 4 day turnaround, so about 1 week, but let's get this off and ship these out. So that is knuckles off. This is what I'm gonna send out to Villain. And then the lower control arm is off as well. So just that one big bolt came off. It's a 17 mil, at least on a 1992 40 SX. And then they're actually gonna cut this and extend it a couple inches. So let's get it. Finally came in the mail. I've got my, I would say, angle kit from Villains. Now what I ended up doing was sending in the lower control arms. As you can see, I'll just grab this one. Right here is where they cut, extended, and re-welded. So the lower control arms are extended. From here, I also sent in the knuckles, which they had modded as well for their kit. All new parts. They also sent 40 millimeter longer tie rod ends and new ends and everything, as well as I had to get new ball joints on the end, so they've already put brand new ball joints on, and it comes with all hardware. So guys, from here, it's just putting the kit back on. I do need to pull my stock tie rods off so we can put the 40 millimeter extended tie rods on. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I need to pull off the old tie rods and put it all back. All right, guys, it's time to start putting everything back together since the angle kit is here. So first thing I did was break loose the old tie rod. So luckily now we've got this off. So from here, we just need to assemble the new one and put it on. From here, putting the tie rod together is pretty easy now that we have the old one off. So they sent a brand new one. I'm gonna leave it wrapped up a little bit, that way I don't get grease all over. Let's just take this end off. After taking the end off, now that we're here, let's take this boot and slip it all the way over, just because this boot is gonna protect all that goop inside there. That way it's always got a little lubrication. So we're just gonna put this on, push it through. And then we can start feeding it up to about where we need it. Then from here, guys, I'm just going to put this lock washer all the way back on. We can spin it up to the whole way until we put the tie rod end on. Now this one came with all new tie rod ends, so from here, you can adjust how far out you want it. For this kit, I'm going to start with screwing it all the way on, still giving me a little bit extra. So now that we have the tie rod end all tightened down, let's take this cover off and start to screw it into the car. Guys, and once we have this onto the car, we are going to all right, guys, now that it's time, let's put this onto the car. Just leave this off a little bit. We are going to have to zip tie that in a second here. So let's put it onto the car first. Guys, now that the tie rod's on and we've got the boot in place, let's just take some zip ties and zip tie this on tight. That way that boot does not start to move as we start to hit full lock and angle. So that's tight. And so is that one. So from here, let's just cut these ends off. Guys, I know it's not the best view, but let's get underneath here and put the lower control arm back on. All right, guys, and just like that, lower control arm is on, so let's just tighten it all the way down. The easiest for me was once you have the lower control arm on, I'm not tightening it all the way down yet because I still want it to move a little bit, just so I can start to get these other pieces into place. Once you start to put everything else into place and start to tighten it up, then I'll tighten that lower control arm all the way up, but I want to have a little bit of a flexibility right now just so I can make sure to get everything else on. And then from there, I'll tighten it up after I get everything else on. So let's just put these control arms on, and then I'll put the sway bar back on here in a second, and then this will be held up in place. So I'm just loosely setting everything on. That way that lower control arm can sit into place, and then we'll tighten it all the way down. Back the sway bar now. Now everybody's might be set up a little bit differently. I'm just setting it up the way that mine is. So mine goes underneath first, sets into place, and we'll come up and, whoopsies, then we'll go 1, 2, and mine sets up and through, and then my last one goes on. Then let's put the nut on the top. And then once we tighten this down here in a second, you're going to see that everything can sit. So from here, I'm going to start to tighten everything down a little bit. And don't forget, we still have to tighten down that lower control arm. Now with everything tightened down, everything being snug, now we can get on to the next part, which is going to be just making sure that we can get that knuckle on right. So it's pretty straightforward, guys, how the knuckle sits. We took it off, so we should remember how to put it on. So let's just put it right on. Sits just on like that. And then let's put our nut back on. And then we'll start to tighten that down. And then let's not forget that we also need space for the cotter pin once we tighten this down. All right, guys, once we have the ball joint and everything seated, let's put our cotter pin in and through. All right, guys, now that we have that tightened down and that little cotter pin is in, let's connect the tie rod whatever easiest way we can. Just take a little adjusting right there. All right, now that that's in, let's tighten it down. My new kit is a 19 millimeter, so we'll tighten that down now. And we're almost on the home stretch, guys. So I'm not going to tighten that down 100% because now I want to make sure I can get the coilover reconnected. And then I'll tighten everything down once I can move everything a little bit. All right, so coilover is reconnected on. Now we can tighten down the ball joint, or I mean, tighten down the tie rod. So I'm going to tighten this all the way down. Let's tighten both of these down. All right, guys, so one thing I should point out, I guess, while I'm doing this side, the other side I already have fully done. Wheel, everything is on. Now, as I'm doing these, of course, after adjusting this, you will have to readjust maybe where your wheels are sitting. So when you put these all back on, if you don't actually adjust this tie rod, the wheels could be all wonky. So what I did have to do was just make sure everything was straight, and then I slowly had to walk this this lower tie rod end out farther and farther just to make sure both wheels are straight from there. If you wanted to get a front end alignment, whatever it may be, to make sure they're perfect. But what I'm doing is just popping this off, spinning this out a little bit farther, which is, of course, letting me adjust the angle and the pitch of where the tires are to make sure that they're both straight. But now, since we have all that done, let's start to reassemble everything. So knuckle is on and tight, cotter pin is in, and we can start to tighten this 30 mil all the way down. Now it's time to put the brake rotor back on. Then now to get this to sit in place, I do have a giant spacer, which I'm going to put over just to tighten down on this. And then from there, we'll put the brake caliper back up. So here's my big front spacer. It just sits on like so. And then, of course, I just take my 5 lug nuts, which are all 17 mils, and I just screw into this, which then gives that bigger offset for the front wheels. So I'm going to tighten down all 5 of these. That way the brake rotor can be secured, and then calipers getting put on next. Guys, let's get it into place and screw it on. Pretty hard to do, trying not to be in front of the camera the whole time and block, but both screws are in. So now I can just tighten down both 17s. And then from there, guys, we have one thing left to do, and that's just to put the tire on and then maybe adjust the tie rod. Otherwise, calipers on, just needs to be tightened. All right, guys, so in all honesty, this wasn't too hard to do overall. Took a couple hours of my time. It did take a little bit longer to get parts back from them. It's set up to a 4 to 5 day turnaround. Mine took a little over a week, which isn't a huge issue, but I knew I wanted to get mine done in time for this upcoming drift season. So, guys, I'm going to finish tightening these up, We're gonna check and see if both wheels are straight and aligned, and then it's another project finished. All right, guys, so finally the car is dropped, and I know it's going to be hard to see on camera, but I am extremely happy with how the angle kit turned out. It wasn't too hard at all, so this was another episode completed. It was kind of that secret episode that shouldn't have happened yet, but I decided let's get the angle kit before the season's here and parts are out too long. So I did go with Villains. Right from there, you can just type in Villains on Google. It will pull them up. So it's Villains. The kit itself, you can do it one of two ways. You can either send in your lower control arms and your knuckle, they'll mod them, send out new tie rods. And that was with shipping. I think I paid all the way in maybe 500 and something bucks. I don't feel like that's too bad for 60 degrees of angle. I will show you at the end with the wheel turned all the way out, but this is how it's sitting, and that's not adjusting my coilovers and giving more camber. But I like the way that it's sitting right now. Install was pretty easy, guys. Actually taking everything off was harder than putting everything back on. Everything went on pretty smoothly, except for, of course, figuring out that alignment and adjusting the tie rods. But I would say another successful video. I can't wait to actually try the angle kit out, make sure everything works. So we'll have to get into the car. One more sweet little thing was some places give candy, some give stickers. They gave a sticker and mini airplanes to throw, so I thought that was pretty cool. Can't wait to put the sticker on the car. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're following the series or you just wanted to watch the Villains Angle kit for the S13. So guys, keep hitting that like button, subscribe, and tell me what you want to see next. Otherwise, drift season starts officially for me in about 2 weeks. So peace out, and until next time.